Welcome back to another episode of Inside Multifamily Access Control, brought to you by Salto. Again, Colin's with me. Colin, how you doing?
Doing well. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. So today, special opportunity. We have somebody joining Colin and I today to talk about innovation and the realities around it. So Mark Zikra with CA Ventures. Mark, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Mark Zikra with CA Ventures, Vice President of Innovation. CA, we've been focusing on technology and innovation for the last 15 years, really focusing on advancing our buildings and our space and putting in the best products and making the resident experience as good as it can. My job specifically has been focused on developing our strategy and our kind of master specification documentation for all of our new construction, as well as some of our legacy operating assets as new technology comes into play. So, we were really excited to partner with Salto a handful of years ago and have been, continuing that partnership ever since, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in our buildings and trying to make sure that we're on the forefront and our residents are having a blast in our buildings.
Very cool. So if you don't mind, just a little bit more on your background, specifically, like what got you into the innovation side? Are you an engineer by trade, just someone that liked taking apart their VCR when they were growing up? Like what drove you to get into this space?
Yeah, it's a pretty wild journey. I was the kid, growing up that was taking engines apart, putting them back together, constantly exploring how things work. And really just trying to understand like what is it about something that makes it good and what makes it exciting for people to use. I got a marketing degree from Iowa State University, and for some reason that translated into wanting to work in technology and innovation. But my first real job was as a property manager, or a leasing manager at one of our assets, one of CA's first portfolios in Ames, Iowa. And through that, I just started learning the industry. I learned the possibilities. I thought it was fascinating to have such a broad scale impact on so many people by building a better building or managing a better building. And I saw the impact that we could have. Eventually it just kind of snowballed into constantly having new ideas and different ways to approach, technology, and operations. And over time, one thing led to the next, and it just kept kind of going and going and going and going. And I ended up understanding and learning all about access control and technology design, in new construction and how we wanted to manage all of that. And it just turned into a really great opportunity for me, and CA gave me the opportunity to take that and run with it. And so we were able to, just kind of create a position that focused strictly on how we design our buildings for maximum impact with technology.
Very cool. So it sounds, when I was listening to what you're saying, I get a sense of a high level of curiosity. Seems to be a level of what you bring probably to this, which I have a feeling if we took a cross cut about people that are in the innovation space, that's pretty high in the spectrum of an attribute, if you would, that people have.
Yeah, for sure.
So on that, though, it makes me wonder. So everyone has a different approach that they have towards innovation, and whether it's thinking about it or testing with it, or what piques curiosity. So, what is your approach, and CA's approach that you take towards innovation?
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is super unique about how we approach it and what we do is we actually took the resources and dedicated a team for innovation and for furthering the advancement of our technology and our plans. And I speak to a lot of people in the industry, and that's not something that I see regularly. A lot of developers and a lot of owners and managers do not necessarily put a huge focus on this. It's usually someone's kind of second job. And so what we did is, I think, super unique is really, took the time to focus on it and spun up a team. We have an innovation kind of department. We have an innovation lab where, one of the individuals on my team is really focused heavily on research and development. And so constantly exploring new products and services. We create innovation reports on technology and products that are emerging, really heavily focused on some of the kind of early funding seed round, Series A companies that are coming up with really awesome products that we can partner with and help shape into something that they may not have seen. So we look for these critical partnerships in an effort to put our experience into their hands and say, this is what we think, this is how we see the space and how some of these things are shaping out to be, and we think your product is great. And so we then take that beta test, pilot, roll things out in a few different locations. We have a pretty broad spectrum of building types, which makes it pretty easy for us to identify, like, this would be great here, this would be great here, here's a competitor, we can put it over here, and then see how they all fare in the long run. But I think it's just super important to dedicate the resources to focusing on this and making sure that, like, it's something that you're putting a lot of stock into, because at the end of the day, I mean, if you get blindsided by new innovation, you're going to get left behind, and that's not a secret. That's fact that has been proven time and time again. So why not put the effort into it now and be ahead of the curve?
Yeah, that's awesome, and you're right. Not everybody is dedicating a team to that. So having that experience, right, and the investigative work that it appears your team does in today's world, there's all kinds of new ideas. How do you go about what's going to stick? What's a fad? And what do you think are some of those fads today versus staying power? When you think about unattended tours and amenity space usage and water monitoring and everything that's being talked about now in the world, what's going to stay and what's just a quick here today, gone tomorrow?
Yeah, so there's three categories that we look at. Does it impact our residents in a positive way? Does it simplify operations in some capacity? And does it drive value for our investors? If something hits those three categories, it's usually a win in one way or another. And there's a lot of things right now that are obviously floating around, things like mask recognition and, temperature monitoring and all of these different things specifically related to COVID. One of the things that we try really hard to do is look a little bit outside of the box. So let's take mask recognition as an example. CCTV is an extremely powerful tool in a building for security, surveillance, really finding out who may have caused damages in the building, or if there's a break-in or something to that nature. We want to make sure our residents feel safe and secure. Artificial intelligence-based CCTV systems that are via software are immensely powerful, and we can turn things like mask recognition on and off through learning and AI and software. So when we think about something like that, while yes, it may be good to have now, it's not going to be necessarily pertinent in a year and a half when hopefully we have a vaccine, a solution to the current state of the world, and we can all kind of get back to living our normal lives. So there's a lot of people who are spending tons and tons of money just to bring their stuff up to speed with that, but it might be gone in a year. So what we say is, okay, mask recognition is great, but what else would that give us? Well, it would give us things like license plate recognition for our parking if we have an AI or a smart camera solution. It would give us things like loitering recognition. Like you can use these tools in other ways, and some of these fads are just kind of in the moment, but the technology behind them might be very pertinent to something in the future. Same thing with occupancy sensing. Like, you don't want too many people in your amenity space. Cool. There's devices and tools that exist for that now, but once the capacity thing is kind of out of the picture, well, now I want to know who's using the treadmills in my gym and how often are they being used? How often are they being cleaned? Because then that information can go back to development, and we can say, hey guys, our gyms are typically at about 40% occupancy during peak hours, right? Maybe we downsize. Maybe we don't need 10 treadmills. Maybe we split the gym into 2 and the yoga room is always full. So, how can we make better development decisions based on the information? Some of the other things, really just relating to fads are, spending the time to analyze it. I mean, it seems like so often you get an email from, I mean, 5 times a day, I get an email from someone who says, "Hey, my company does this. I saw you on LinkedIn. You know, we're trying to push this out real quick." And then a lot of times what happens is that email then gets forwarded to someone in a different department, and they're like, "Oh, like, we got to work on this right away." Take a minute, do your research, evaluate it, have an internal team to discuss. We have a team that is pulled together from different parts of the organization, from asset management to finance to our development guys to our operations and marketing and leasing teams. And when we have an idea, we circulate it and we talk about it. And we have a conversation around, is this valid? Does this make sense to implement, or is this going to go away? And I think that's really step one that anyone and everyone can do right now, is just develop that open conversation internally around what you are doing. Don't do it in a closed environment. Open it up to everybody.
Yeah. And Lee, before you ask the next question, I would just say, the idea that you guys assess the technology, not just the problem, is awesome. I think that is so true, that technology can solve more than one problem, and in identifying the best technology is much more important than maybe solving the best for this current problem that can't solve any of those other stuff. So that's awesome.
And just to push one more thing on that is focusing on how things can work together. And I'll bring this back around to access control. So with the CCTV conversation, how can we integrate CCTV into access control so that when someone fobs in, we have a screen grab of it? Or if there's tailgating, we know who they fobbed in behind or who they tailgated behind. And we can start to build integrations to all of these different parts and pieces that really enhance the overall experience. And I think that's another super important thing, is looking at how it works with what exists in your ecosystem already.
Yeah, it's sort of a platform play, and it's interesting because it a lot of times, and I think from the manufacturing side, we get in the process of I call it the hammer salesman. So it's sort of like you need a hammer, like it's like the fever camera, right? So it's a point solution for everything, and then you got a million point solutions, and the experience is hard to continue. This, you get to spare parts and the rest of it, but so speaking of some of the fads, if you would, or things that'll stick, and then you mentioned some of the things that are like nibbling at the edges of access control, but I didn't hear you say touchless. So that overnight became sort of the new frictionless and seamless of what our industry was talking about before, and then it turned into touchless. Where do you view that demand, if you would, once sort of normal comes back down a little bit? We're probably not going to go the same normal, but we'll have a new normal. It's not going to be the hype cycle that we're on now, but so when it comes back, where do you see touchless?
I mean, it's certainly a great experience. I use this example a lot of, imagine walking home. Let's say you live in an apartment building and you walk home, and when you're walking in the front door, the door's open, the elevator's automatically recalled for you. It's open, it knows what floor you're going to, and you arrive at your entry door without touching anything. Regardless, touchless or not, that's an awesome experience. I usually throw in one more little token, that the building would have a speaker at the entrance that would say "Welcome home, Mark," just for fun. But it's a good experience, and I think the important part is all of that technology exists. Like that's doable right now today. You can take it a step further into things like, integrating with the rest of the access control and having all these door operators and openers and stuff. I don't know that it will be as broad sweeping as, people are making it out to be at the moment. I think certain experiences are better touchless. There are other experiences that some people, like taking a tour, for example. Some people don't want a self tour. Some people do want that human interaction, and they want to go into an office and they want to sit down and they want to talk to someone about what they're trying to do. Whereas other people want to go do it on their own. We've had many conversations around this. I think it will certainly become a point and something that more and more people will strive to, but I don't think it will be the all encompassing touchless experience that everyone is kind of putting it out to be. Yeah. That's my personal opinion on the matter.
No, that's what I wanted, because I think the desire for the Jetsons people have, and they want that, and it's we've been Colin and I've been talking about it. I think it's more of a door problem than a lock problem at that point, right? So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and it's also, I mean, if you think about how expensive that would be to build a building, like let's say I have 25 access control points throughout my common areas right now. Typically right now I have an auto operator and a mag lock or something like that on the front door, on the front entry door to the building, where I could theoretically trigger the auto operator and the mag lock to open that door for me. Now, if I want to put an auto operator on 25 doors, it is very, very, very expensive to do. And as it sits right now, most developers, the first thing that gets VE'd out is technology related items. It's things that you and me and Colin are going to sit here and say, why would you take that out? That's an awesome feature for the residents, but it's also a really expensive thing for like one door or two doors or 20 doors, which could lead to a massive savings. And you got to weigh those things out.
Yeah, well, that's what I wondered though too. Is the majority of the use cases? So if you look at like the door operators like that, they were built for ADA compliance and other things that don't necessarily, they weren't thinking about it in this manner. And I just
Yeah.
wonder if there needs to be some more innovation in that end. And with more volume, can price go down and the rest, right? So it needs to move from a specialty item to it. But then again, I think amenity spaces in some areas where that matters, it may make sense. I don't know. We'll see. The good news is people are talking about it finally, right? So it's now at least gotten some attention.
So,
yeah.
So Mark, on that, talking about this technology investment, in where do you see some of this changing as it relates to a retrofit build versus a new build? And what's CA Ventures take on kind of assessing the investment value of technology in a new build versus additional technology in a retrofit?
So, excellent question. One of the things that we try to do with all new technology that we're looking at is understand how can we implement it in a retrofit. If it were something that it doesn't always work that you can run. You can't run 50 new Ethernet lines throughout a building that don't exist because the building was built on. So we try to make it a good point to focus on like how can we bring this into an old or existing building. Identifying the value is really challenging. This is something that I've actually been trying to explore more and more lately with some other people I know in the industry. But assigning value, assigning a sort of a value to a building based on the technology that exists in it doesn't really exist. So like when, for example, if we're going to do due diligence on an asset that we're looking at buying, most of the time, the concept of what is the infrastructure, what is the technology infrastructure, what exists, what's in place, what would we need to improve, that conversation doesn't happen. It's changing and it's happening more and more internally with us, but I feel like a lot of times that isn't a factor in defining a building valuation. And I think that is starting to change slowly. And I think that's a super important thing for the people who are assigning value to understand. I'm not intelligent enough to talk at length about this. I spend money. I don't know how to figure out how to, do all of that. But what I do know is that it is really important. If you're looking at buying a building and it's built on a coax infrastructure, but you want a Class A wireless network in it, it's a little bit more challenging. I mean, sure, you can, there's solutions that you can run like a DOCSIS, a managed Wi-Fi DOCSIS network on it. Or you can retrofit your access control in some capacity, but understanding like, do we want to upgrade that? If we do, that's going to be $500,000, and we need to assign that into what we're trying to do. So there are alternatives, right? If it doesn't have the right infrastructure, there are ways to go around it. Like CCTV, for example, you can put a smart system in a new building, or you can overlay a smart system on the local NVR. You can basically put it in between, and it's processing the images as they pass through it. So there's ways to accomplish what you need. It just depends on what you're ultimately trying to get out of it all.
Absolutely. So, well, I appreciate this, Mark. I mean, we could talk to you all day long on technology and getting the details, but you gave us some great insights on how you approach it in the innovation side. I mean, talking heads like myself and Colin, we'd like to talk all the time about how it gets done, but talking to a practitioner that's actually implementing it, and as you said, spending the money is great to get that insight. So if people want to find out more about CA Ventures or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
ca-ventures.com. That's our corporate website. My email is mzikra@ca-ventures.com. Email me, visit the website.
Just don't email you one of those, hey, I got this new technology.
Yeah, don't go to LinkedIn and email and then send me like 8 messages, because I will not respond.
Just following up on this. Yes. Yeah, don't do that. So, all right, well, cool. Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Very
Colin,
much appreciate the
Of
time.
course. Thanks for
as
having
always,
me, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.